Good evening and welcome to Africa News Network First Fast Live. My name is Cindy Mabi. King Zwelithini says all hell will break loose if land is removed from the authority of the Zulu kingdom. Other monarchs have since lent their support for the king's call to leave Ingonyama Trust alone. King Zwelithini's stern warning follows the ANC's resolution that traditional leaders should relinquish custodianship of the land held in a trust by the government. The resolution has strained relations between the Zulu king and the newly elected ANC leadership under President Cyril Ramaphosa. The ANC's resolution follows the release of a report by the high-level panel on the assessment of key legislation and fundamental change. The panel, headed by former President Kgalema Motlanthe, recommends for the Ingonyama Trust Act to be repealed or amended. Motlanthe recommends for the Ingonyama Trust, of which King Zwelithini is the sole trustee, to be dissolved. And here are some arguments for and against the land amendments. Proponents say land must be transferred to the people who live in those communities, but opponents say traditional leaders act as custodians of rural communities' land and assets. Proponents say the amendment will allow landowners to use it as collateral for finance, but opponents say locking land in a traditional leadership trust prevents further dispossession. And proponents say vast tracts of arable rural land lie fallow without any productive use. But opponents say traditional leaders are an easy target compared to commercial farmers.
What has been done by the high-level panel to recommend that the Ingonyama Act must be repealed or amended, it will definitely deprive the traditional structures of the remaining land that was owned by the African people. As we know our history, that large stretches of land are under the control of the colonizers or of the white people. Now, the ANC government is not doing it in the right way. If they say they want to repossess land without compensation, but go straight to the land that is owned by black people, because this will be a repossession of land with no hope that it will ever return to black people who currently own it under indigenous and customary laws.
And the lines are open on 011-203-5120, 011-203-5120. Is this the unintended consequences of land expropriation without compensation now hitting the traditional leaders and the constituencies that they serve? Andile Mqitama is Black First, Land First President. Good evening to you, and we're joined on the phone line by Professor Themba Msimang, IFP Acting Secretary General. We'll just start with you, Professor Msimang, in that, is this the wrong move to go about it in empowering communities to have a title deed so that they can then negotiate, finance, or decide what to do with the land?
Yes, I think it is definitely a wrong move. When you mention that this can help people to get finances, that makes the situation even worse, because our people fail to repay the banks on the loans or on the mortgage bonds. The next thing is that they are then dispossessed of the land, which is repossessed by the banks. So by allowing people to use their land as security for loans, you are actually increasing the number of the landless in this country.
Professor, you don't think that we also perhaps, lacking the, or rather undermining the ability of the communities if they were to understand what a title deed will entitle or enable you to do, and that choice should rest with community members?
Well, there are many members of our black communities in the townships or in the suburbs. They have a good knowledge of what a title deed is, and they do have title deeds, many of them, but as a result, they have lost the land.
All right, we'll get a view from Andile Mqiltama, Black First Land First President and Convener. Good evening to you and thanks so much for joining us. What do you make out of this now that this think tank has come up with a report that suggests that the custodianship of the land must now be transferred to government, who will then distribute it to the communities?
No, the first point to make is that the ANC new leadership led by Cyril Ramaphosa must stay away from the land of black people. This is an attempt to dispossess the dispossessed again. And it shows the fundamental misunderstanding of the historical question of land dispossession that must be addressed. When we say land expropriation without compensation, we assume already that the people that must be benefited are black people who have lost their land. Now, the little pockets of land which our people have, after 1913, we talk about 13% of the land, and that includes the Ngonyama Trust and so on. The first thing Cyril Ramaphosa's leadership does is to attack the land in the hands of black people. It is true, when you title land and you quickly talk about collateral, in other words, commodification of land. Now, all of a sudden, the land can be put as security for a loan. Who's got money? White-owned banks, white monopoly banks. They're going to come to our people and say, we'll give you these loans and put your land for collateral, and within 6 months we'll lose all that land. And we know that these are friends of course, Cyril Ramaphosa. No, we must not accept this, and he must stay away from the land of black people, and the ANC must be ashamed of itself. The ANC is terrified of white people, is a coward organization, and is acting cowardly against our people. We're talking 80% of the land, which is in the hands of about 35,000 white families. Why are they not saying we must get title on that land? That is what they should be talking about. Their first pronouncements must be to say, black people must have title over the land owned by land thieves who have 80% of our land in their hands, not go to the king.
We'll ventilate the rationale, Professor. Just stay on the line, please. We have Tony in Mpumalanga. Good evening to you and thanks for joining us.
Good evening. How are you, ma'am?
I'm very well. How are you? What are your thoughts?
Our thought is this is disappointing, man. This is very, very, very much disappointing. We love our government. We love the government that is owned by the current organization, which is ANC, which we support. But as much as not everybody can understand the issue of the land, this is very disappointing from Kgalema Motlanthe and their team. And then we cannot blame everybody out of this. We cannot blame the whole entire executive of the ANC, but only the individuals. So basically, truly speaking, whatever Kgalema Motlanthe and their team, what they have investigated and found, it is unaccepted. Basically, they are undermining the black people. Because basically, the first people who we need to respect in terms of the land is the king.
Yeah, Tony, thanks so much for your call. We're going to have to let you go. Your line is a bit scratchy. Professor Msimang, we heard from Isilo Kingswellitini saying that this is essentially drawing a line in the sand, that all hell will break loose should government try to put their hands on the traditional land. In your view, what is the rationale? What is, they argue about, number one, giving more power to the communities and the community members not necessarily benefiting from the leases that the traditional leaders will then dish out, so to speak. What, in your view, can justify this particular report?
Firstly, Ngonyama is within his rights to make the threats he's making, because to traditional leaders, this is a double blow. The first blow is that this step indicates that to the ANC government, it is only lip service that they are paying to upholding and maintaining African customary law. They are fighting against it. They are stripping the traditional leaders of any power they ever had. That is in the first place. And in the second place, they are dispossessing the black people who are already so terribly dispossessed. So I do understand the mood and the anger of His Majesty, King of the Zulus. And also have to note that this carrot which is dangled as a right to get a lease, black people can get a lease. Those who are under the Ngonyama Trust land, they can get the lease from the Ngonyama Trust. So it is not true that they will not get the benefits. If they wanted perhaps to have a lease, they can get it.
All right, Professor, we take another caller, a few callers. Tabi in KZN, Angel in Cape Town. We come to you next. Good evening, Tabi.
Good evening, Cindy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay, sis. I'm just an ordinary citizen, and I'm very young, and I totally do not agree with what has been said. We need to keep our land. Imagine, Cindy, if can I speak in Zulu?
Correct.
Okay. Imagine uma ngabe sengizoba ne-lease and sengiyobambisa ngomhlaba wami ebank. That means mina if ngifeyila ukukhokha leyo mali sengizophucwa umhlaba wami. Umhlaba wobabamkhulu. Already thina as black people we have lost our land. So now sesiyaphucwa. This is actually an insult to black people. Not only the Zulus, but to all of us, because this is not happening kuthina maZulu phela, but it means all of the black people abaphethwe amakhosi. Fortunately, mina angihlali endaweni elawulwa amakhosi, but my father has indawo la elawulwa khona amakhosi, and we do have a big plot of land. It belongs to us. Yeah. Government has no say. The bank has no say.
All right, Tabi, we're going to have it. We do appreciate it, echoing the professor and our panel member, Andile Mqitama, saying that the dispossession is a reality if you're going to use your land as collateral. We have another caller, Angel, in Cape Town, and we sympathize with your water situation there. But what's your comment or question? Hi, Angel.
Yes, thank you so much. I just want to make a comment. I think it's really crazy what's happening because, hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I think it's really crazy. Why are they only targeting the small minority of land that's left? I mean, I live in Cape Town. You can go to Stellenbosch, everywhere. The whole land belongs to white people. And why are they not targeting the whites? They're only targeting the blacks. And like the other person said, 80% of the land is in the hands of the white people. Why is he only starting with that small minority of, land that the people don't even have? And then even if they're going to dispossess it, we all know how the system is corrupted. What are going to be the requirements for land distribution to the people? Or is it only going to be for those politicians taking the land to themselves again and putting people again in poverty? I think if they have to start off this thing of land redispossession, they must start here in Stellenbosch and all over South Africa and redistribute the land equally to the people. I think that's my comment. I think it's really unfair and it's a shame for him.
All right, we'll get a response from Andile in why is this another neoliberalistic way of looking at, number one, commercializing land supposedly for the benefit of the community. It seems like there's a veil around this particular report that wants to serve a particular purpose.
First thing, it's important to say that this is not just the report. It is a resolution of the ANC conference. So it's a resolution of the ANC, which Ramaphosa will implement. Firstly, it shows part of the thinking of the Ramaphosa group, which is everything must be for sale. Everything must be commodified. Everything must be given to white monopoly capital. So that logic finds expression in this immediate attack on the communal tenure system. But it also shows what we call, colonial mentality. The idea that our tenure systems, African tenure systems, are not secured. It is not true. In fact, studies have shown across the African continent that as soon as you give title to land, the vulnerable loses the land that they have to the elites and those who have money. So this is what exactly Ramaphosa and the ANC are saying is going to happen. It's urban bias, it's not understanding the African system, but it's fundamentally disrespect of black people and the fear of white people, because we can't be talking about land in the hands of black people in this country. We are landless. Why is the focus on the land, the little land that we have? We must give the ANC a very clear message. Land expropriation without compensation means taking land from white people who stole our land. Leave the king alone. Leave. And I just now think, think about it. The king of Abatembu is in jail. It shows that the ANC, in fact, does not take seriously any system that is African, that is out of the colonial logic, which is out of the money logic. Our kings are being destroyed, our system of governance are being destroyed, and clearly there's a juniorization, if you like, of the system of African governance, of African value system, of African governance over the land question. So we need to educate the ANC because it is totally colonial in its thinking.
All right, so let's get a caller. Thanks for your patience, Sam in Kagiso. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Cindy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, Cindy, man, I'm very much disappointed about this own leadership that we have elected in December. Now, what especially the king is so worried about, I can really understand. We are heading in the wrong direction now. Cindy, all the callers they have already mentioned. Now I can say that's what I wanted to say. We are heading in the wrong direction, I think, with this government now. Thank you very much.
All right, Sam and Kagiso, thanks so much for your call. Professor Msimang, is this, in your view, another attack on the identity, the nativity of Africans, and in that the cultural systems are being eroded, that with a possible threat of being dispossessed again, should this particular resolution be implemented?
Very well said. That's exactly it. Our systems have been completely undermined. Even our traditional leaders have been completely undermined. In this Republic of South Africa, it is only the king of the Zulus who gets more or less the dignity that our kings deserve. As it's been pointed out about the king of the Abatembu, who is in jail as we speak. So this undermines the traditional systems altogether. The people who are under the Ingonyama caste honor their king, and they are happy if the land is under the trusteeship of their king and other Amakosi, because it's been like that since time immemorial. And as a result of that, there wasn't a single African who was landless. Today, I'm glad you spoke to a lady from Stellenbosch, because Stellenbosch is part of a country or a town in Western Cape. And Western Cape is a typical example of how our land has been exploited and given to the whites. People who own land in Western Cape are not only South African whites. Many of them are foreigners from overseas countries. This government has seen it right and proper to increase the price of land in the Western Cape, to make it prohibitive to any African to be able to purchase it. The few blacks that have land in Western Cape are the ANC moguls who have benefited from the BBEE. They are the only ones who can afford the prices. The prices are meant to benefit the white moguls who come to exploit our land because they find it, comparatively speaking, very cheap.
We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Themba Msimang, IFP Acting Secretary General. And we take our last caller, Isaac in Polokwane. Good evening to you.
Good evening, ma'am, and the listeners and the viewers.
Welcome. What's your comment or question?
Well, Cindy, the first thing I want to say is that this land issue isn't as simple as Bitrama is making it seem like in the studio. It's not an issue of saying white people own 80% of the land and then black people own 20% of the land. It's about looking at it in a myopic position as possible. For instance, in terms of provinces, I agree that Western Cape, for example, has the least number of transformation in terms of land ownership in South Africa, in the whole of South Africa. And I agree that places like Stellenbosch have experienced exploitation. But we do have to agree that there are some provinces in South Africa that have made sure that black people occupy land, black people own land. But coming to this issue in today's topic, which I believe that it should be looked at and discussed as whether is it a true policy in the ANC or just a disingenuous position in the ANC to try and fool South Africans that they should target land owned by rural areas. For me personally, I believe that currently, when you look at the rights that black people have in these rural areas, they're not enough for them to actually develop the place. Let me make this example. A man and a woman get married. The man moves to the rural area. The rights that they can get in the rural area is what we call only a permission to occupy. Now, the man decides to develop the house using the money of the matrimonial property.
Yeah, just summarize, please, Isaac.
Sorry?
Yeah, just summarize. We out of time.
Yes, all right, so let me summarize. The point is, the permission to occupy, at the end of the day, does disadvantage a lot of people that live in those areas. Because when they divorce those parties, then the man has a favor from the chief. The woman can't occupy that place. The woman has no claim in court to dissolve that property because the property is in the ownership of the chief. I believe that in order for us to fully be transformative, we need to make sure that the land everywhere in the country, the right to own, is accessed by all South Africans. It doesn't matter whether it's in the urban area or in the rural area.
Isaac, we get you. Thank you so much for that. And of course, the complexities, again, in terms of ownership, especially in this scenario where there is a customary marriage or there's development of that land, and yet you only have right of usage and not necessarily ownership.
Yeah, but the last caller does not understand how sophisticated the communal tenure system is and how we resolve our difficulties. I mean, our systems are much older than even this Western notion of title commodification put on the market. A home for us as Africans is not an investment to be sold. So that's not how we think about it. We build a house. I mean, if you look at the beautiful houses that we build in the rural areas, you can't think about money because there's no way in terms of the market you can get back what you put in. So you're not competing there. You're building a nice home for yourself, for your children, and their children. And when there is a dissolution of the marriage, our systems, again, make sure that we take care of all the people, the children. And so I don't accept that.
Let's use the example of Mama Winnie Mandela that disputed the home in Qunu, saying that was also pretty much prescribed under the customary law.
But you see, this is the thing. The whole thing was settled by a high court, you see. If the matter was resolved in fact, if the matter was given to Africans to deal with this issue, I believe that Mama Winnie Mandela will have a house. But they manipulated the system. They go into the high courts. They have this white system, which end up dispossessing our people. If you go back to our systems, there's no way, I can't see how Mama Winnie Mandela would have been dispossessed in the manner that it has happened. But we have two-tier system in South Africa in terms of the law. We have the law that of white people, and we have our law. And our law is been undermined, and we basically find ourselves under Western Roman Dutch law, which supersedes everything else. That is why a king such as a King Zulu Namhlanje is under attack. The Abatembu king is in jail, and we are a landless people. It is a disgrace that the ANC has done what it's doing.
All right, Andile, as always, thanks so much.
We stand with the king, by the way.
For coming through and for your insight. We have Andile Mqatama, Black First, the Land First President, joining us in studio. Professor Themba Msimang, IFP Acting Secretary General, on the line. And you at home, thanks indeed for taking the trouble to call in. We'll take a quick break. We'll see you shortly.